hope everybody is safe. We know there's a lot of things going on in Texas right now, millions of people without power and water. And so, we're just kind of saying some prayers for everybody out there. We wanted to dig in a little bit more on today's show, covering again the Stonehenge, because some more things are coming out. And the last podcast that I did on this was just highlighting some Neolithic graves that were found, and some pottery and other things that were found near the site in Stonehenge, and just showing that it is a site that has been occupied since the Neolithic, and I think the dates are going to be pushed back further the more that they investigate. And it's also showing that no matter how long we have been investigating Stonehenge, we are finding more and more information. So there's still a lot to be uncovered and discovered about the ancient site. And in my opinion, I think that it ties to other places around the globe. And I believe that these people, these Neolithic, and I believe they go back even, further in time. I don't believe they were just bored farmers and agricultural people, or even hunters and gatherers that decided to throw these giant stone monuments that would have taken, a pretty high skill of technology to be able to move. It would show that they have astronomical knowledge, planetary knowledge, that would, far surpass, I think, what we would think of Neolithic, early agricultural people having. So there's a lot of mystery in it, and we're going to just cover some more of that. And I think this is even more fascinating. They found that, and they've been researching this for a while, but there was an original Stonehenge discovered that echoed a legend of the wizard Merlin. So some fascinating ties, and they're going to actually take us across the planet here as we move forward with the article. They are saying that the earliest megalithic circle at Stonehenge was first built in the west of Wales more than 5,000 years ago, before its stones were dug up and dragged over 140 miles to its present site in the west of England. Apparently, this new research is suggesting. And you have to think, like, why are they erecting massive stones? I mean, if you ever go outside and stand next to a stone this size, it's going to take incredible amounts of manpower and technology to transport, to actually, excavate and mine these stones and get them to the location. There had to have been a very serious reason for these guys to do this. This isn't something they're just doing for, in my opinion, graves or to honor the dead or things like that, which is suggested here lightly. I don't agree with that. I think that this is something, much more powerful, and gosh knows, what the real purpose for them were. We know that there's, some astronomical and astrological purposes for them, and we'll get into that here in a second. But when you see this stuff, it had to take the entire village, or the entire, strongest people of the civilization that was in the area to actually, do this. So they didn't just do this because they were bored. This would have taken a lot of their energy, and they had to have a lot of food and supplies and safety. And, in those environments, they can only do it for a certain amount of time because it gets too cold. And this is way back when these people weren't survival was still a big part of life. You don't just go move ginormous stones 140 miles on foot and horse and however they did it without having a really good purpose. So that alone is something to consider as we look at this. They're saying that the findings also support a wild legend that the mythical wizard Merlin ordered giants to move Stonehenge from Ireland and rebuild it in its current location. So there we have it. We have, again, this reemergence of giants and their role in constructing and erecting these giant megaliths, which is fascinating. Where do these giants come from? And if you have a 12th century mythology or story that was written, that author had to have also known about ancient giants. And where did he get that information? So this is passed on knowledge, right? He's putting giants into this Merlin character in the story of the Merlin character, because giants existed in the mythos at that time. So, again, you can keep tracing this back thousands of years, and you're always going to find this idea of giants and ancient giants, and them also kind of being the workhorses to build some of these monuments. So that alone is pretty fascinating. We did a Mystery of Ancient Giants podcast recently too, so go check that out. It's just a general overview of giants in the ancient world. It's saying that the researchers discovered the remains of the original stone circle in the Preseli Hills in Wales, near the ancient quarries where the geologists have determined that Stonehenge's famous blue stones were cut. How do they cut these things? Is another question. You've seen Stonehenge. Some of you probably been to Stonehenge. This isn't something you just go and do without having the right technology. So, this suggests a legacy that goes back further in time, which is why I tend to think that the older things get, the more we're looking at some type of advanced civilization, some even, pre-ancient world that was destroyed or lost, or something happened. Could have been an earth cataclysm, could have been a number of things, but it seems like this information is a legacy. This work is a legacy from earlier times, and not like the originating. This isn't where all this stuff started. I think this is a continuance. So apparently, in this new study, it suggests that the blue stones that formed the first stage of Stonehenge may have symbolized the ancestors or lineages of the Neolithic people who lived near the quarries, which may have been why they took the stones with them and left for a far off region. See, I think that's just guesswork. I don't think that's true. I don't think that they're just symbolizing ancestors or lineages. I don't think they need massive giant stones to do that. And how many ancestors did they have? Why is there only a certain amount of stones? You'd have to have much more stones than what they were brought to symbolize ancestors or lineages, things like that. So I think that's a weak argument. I think these were moved or created for even greater purposes than just family genealogy purposes. So, of course, we do see burials near these sites. So the question is there burials where the original Stonehenge circles are found? I don't think they've discovered that yet. So I think this is, again, just guesswork. And you see this a lot in archaeology where, they're just throwing ideas out. They're saying the research could explain the mysterious origins of Stonehenge and why its first builders made such efforts to transport the massive stones almost halfway across Britain. Why would anyone say we are going to build a circle with stones from a quarry 140 miles away? To solve the mystery, Parker Pearson and his team spent more than 5 years investigating Neolithic stone monuments around the hills. In 2017, they determined that 4 stones at a site called Wan, which means peating moorland in Welsh, were all that was left of a much larger circle of up to 60 stones that exactly matched the layout of the original 360-foot wide circle of the blue stones at Stonehenge. And I found that 360-foot wide circle of Stonehenge interesting. 360 is an interesting number. 360 is actually the original calendar. When we look at the original 360-day year, almost every single ancient civilization had a 360-day year. And it's saying here that some historians, scholars, and scientists, along with popular authors, have claimed that the ancient civilizations used a 360-day annual calendar. So we have the Mayans, we have the Egyptians, we have the Aztecs, the India calendars, the Indo-Aryans, which we talked a little bit more about them. This is the Vedas, which the Vedas are very interesting, and we're going to get into them as well going forward. And there's some ties here. But what's interesting is the Sumerian calendar also has a 360-year calendar, and we're going to show you how some of this stuff ties in. And I think there's a connection here with the Sumerians and Africa at large, and particularly the the Egypto-Sumerian kind of peoples that I think that this actually could tie to. So it's very fascinating. So 360 is a number you're going to see come up more and more and more. And apparently Stonehenge looks like it was a calendar, like it was an astronomical calendar that tied together maybe religious dates and ceremonies with celestial events. It also could be a marker to just kind of track solstices and equinoxes and certain constellations and movements of stars. And so I think that would be a little bit more of a reason why Stonehenge was created. It was kind of like, a timepiece, a central place where everyone could, not only do ritual ceremonies, but also, celebrate certain times of the year. It also helped them with crops and agricultural things, be able to mark, where where the sun was going in the sky, and also help them maybe even see if there was any anomalies happening, if things were changed, because, at that point in time, if something were to happen and the earth were to shift or move, that would cause, a mass death, based on, when crops were supposed to be planted, or, anything like that. So, we were tied to the movement of the stars and the sun, and so this would be a real reason why they would probably mark some of these things. And so I think this was a site that was used, for multiple reasons, but I think that those would make more sense than, just graves and lineages of family members. So, moving forward, it said that Stonehenge is most famous for its giant saracens in its main circles, but these stones were erected centuries after the monument was first built. Recent research shows that the saracens are local sandstone boulders that were transported only a few miles to the Neolithic monument about 4,500 years ago. The geologists and archaeologists have long known that many bluestones that ring Stonehenge, some of which weigh up to 5 tons, were transported in ancient times from quarries in the Preseli Hills. Now, some of the stones have a bluish tinge when they are newly broken or wet. I mean, 5 tons, guys. I mean, come on. How do they do this? I mean, they're saying, oh, well, they drug them around with carts or things, but 5 tons is a little absurd. I mean, I don't even know if we could sled 5 tons, easily today. And again, why would they be using every single bit of their manpower to move these things? So, it's kind of up to question. I mean, could they even do it? I mean, if they did they have other methods than we're being told? It's that same tune that we keep hearing back in the ancient world, where we see, almost impossible feats happen. Stones being moved from hundreds of miles away with technology that was, pretty archaic. So they're saying that scientific dating of charcoal and sediments from some of the now empty stone holes suggests that Wan Mon was built about 5,400 years ago, some 400 years before the earliest stage of Stonehenge. So they're basing these numbers off of charcoal sediments, maybe some carbon dating. Again, these dates, I don't trust them. I think they're like, just throwing stuff against a wall. I think that they just, again, they're kind of perpetuating an idea that's already been kind of solidified in archaeoscience. And so because they're looking at what's been discovered before and what's been proposed, they're now kind of keeping within those models. And this is what I was getting to at that models of reality thing. It's like, well, what if we just kind of kept an open mind and said that we don't really know. We see some charcoal, but that doesn't mean that those people built those stones. Those stones could have been there thousands of years before the charcoal pits or anything else got there. I mean, if it's like us, like we out here in Texas, I have Indian mounds that date back to 6,000 BC on my property, and if I go there and I drop some kind of artifact, near the mound, and 2,000 years go by, and they find my artifact and they date it to today, it's like, oh well, then let's date the site in that area. It's like, well, no, I mean, it was just somebody else reoccupying the area. And so I think this can happen, especially when you have massive megalithic stones. I mean, people are going to navigate towards that, or there could be a reason why that land is being reused. And we covered that in the last show too. So, interesting. We want to look at this stuff with an open mind when we read it. The researcher said that it seemed likely that Wan Mon Stone Circle and some other stones nearby were dismantled when entire families left the area to live far away in the east, and up to 80 of the stones were later erected in the present Stonehenge site. Distinct levels of strontium isotopes in the enamel of human teeth found in ancient graves at Stonehenge shows that many of the earliest people buried there did not grow up near its present location in Wessex. Archaeological evidence suggests that they had migrated from further west, possibly modern Wales, and so the original stone circle probably marked the site of the new Neolithic graveyard. Each of the blue stones may have symbolized a notable ancestor. Yeah, I don't really think that. So this is where it gets interesting. We have this Merlin legend, and we need to look at who Merlin was. Merlin was said to be born from an incubus and a human maiden named Adon, making him half demon and half human, which is why he has magical power. So Merlin in legend was not fully human. So he must have been, part demon or part god, or, this kind of rings the whole, Greek mythology where you have these half god, half men. And Merlin seems to have been, one of these people. And again, apparently Merlin was a creation of an author in the 12th century. There's also been evidence that he's a rehash of earlier myth. So Merlin could just be a real person that existed somewhere in the midst of time that has been kind of rewritten about. I mean, that's a potential, maybe like a god of the ancient past. So we definitely need to kind of like open our mind to who Merlin might have been. But apparently he lived in the wilderness as a wild man, despite interacting and assisting 3 different kings. He also helped construct Stonehenge. It says as King Vortigern and had usurped the throne from the previous king by killing him, the younger brothers Uther and Aurelianus, the original king Constans, returned to take back the kingdom some years. After Aurelius became king, Merlin and Uther assisted him, but Britain remains in a state of war. It's saying here that in honor of Aurelians, Merlin builds Stonehenge as a monument and a gravestone for the late king with the help of giants. So there we have it. You have Merlin is a magician, a half god / demon magician who is helping an ancient king put together Stonehenge with the help of giants. Okay, so this is in this mythology of Merlin, which is interesting. And what I find fascinating is that Stonehenge looks a lot like ancient circles in Africa, in South Africa. According to legend, the stone circle was originally, listen to this, like Stonehenge, the circle at Wanman was aligned so that its many of the stones lined up with the sunrise on the summer solstice. Similar alignments have been found at other Neolithic monuments throughout the British Isles, as they could reflect the eternal pattern of movement of the sun and heavens. The idea that Stonehenge was first built from a circle of stones transported from a great distance sounds strikingly similar to a medieval legend that Stonehenge was built at the command of Merlin, the legendary wizard who aided the equally legendary King Arthur. According to the legend, the stone circle was originally located in Africa, and giants relocated it to Ireland to serve as a magical center for healing. Later, the legend goes, Merlin had giants transport the stones to the current site at Salisbury Plain and reassemble them as the monument to Britons killed while fighting the invading Saxons. So that's fascinating. You know what's interesting about that entire legend of the stone circle originally looking at Africa is that we have this Adam's calendar in Africa. And apparently it looks a lot like Stonehenge, and it's called the oldest megalithic site in the world. It's suggested that it's the oldest man-made structure in the world, sometimes referred to as the African Stonehenge. It predates both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid of Giza by tens of thousands of years. Okay, so it's in South Africa. It's a standing stone circle about 30 meters in diameter and has been estimated in some accounts to be more than 75,000 years old. Okay, various astronomical alignments have been identified at the site. What's interesting is this site also seems to be off in some of its alignments, which means it could have been built before some of the shifting has happened on the planet and kind of realigned us to other locations. So, you know, this could be one of those things where this myth could have some truth in it. Maybe there was this magician who and bringer of knowledge who built the stone circle in Africa. Now, this circle was, you know, said to have been built by Enki, and Enki was the lord of magic, construction, arts, design, creation. Okay, so I think there's a little bit of comparison here with Enki and Merlin. Could Merlin be just another rewrite and reskin of this ancient Sumerian god named Enki, who brought you know, magic and creation and helped you know, civilization and all of the, you know, sciences and things like that. So it sounds a little bit similar there. So very interesting connections going on here. And you know, when we look at the original Stonehenge site and we know that it was moved, it also looks like that was also been told in the actual legend of Merlin. So when the legend was written down in the 12th century, the far west of Wales was considered part of Ireland, but it was unlikely that the legend described a 5,000-year-old folk memory of the Stonehenge relocation. The oldest known oral histories, the Sanskrit Vedas from India, are estimated to be just 3,000 years old, but I have to admit the evidence is highly intriguing. Maybe, just maybe, there's a tiny grain of truth in it. Now, the Vedas are much older than 5,000 or 3,000 years old. We've covered that. The Vedas are probably the oldest writings in the world and probably untouched. The oral histories of the Vedas are incredibly massive. They're beyond any written material. I mean, there's so much information and data in there, and they talk about, you know, millions of years and timelines and stuff happening. But I found this really interesting, this connection to Merlin, Enki, Stonehenge, and Adam's calendar, or some of the stone circles in South Africa. So again, if you kind of hold this idea of there being a cataclysm, relocations across the planet, realignments, it would seem that maybe these stone circles were there to track the new star patterns and the new calendar systems that would have, you know, emerged after that rebalancing of the Earth's tilt and axes and wobble and all of that. So it definitely is fascinating. Let me know what you guys think. I know that this stuff is just wild, but it's showing that we really just don't know. And again, these dates are just arbitrary. I don't believe they really know exactly what happened, what these things were built for. So, you know, take a look at the article, take a look at some of the other information on Adam's calendar, Enki, Merlin, and some of that background, and let us know what you think. We're going to kind of keep looking at some of this stuff, and if anything else comes up, we'll go ahead and do another show on it. So we appreciate you being here, and we'll come back at you pretty soon with something else. Thank you.